All right, guys, how are you doing? You enjoying your coverings? All right, my name is Rob Roderick. I'm with the National Tile Contractors Association. If you're not familiar with the NTCA, we have a booth over here. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we've been around for 75 years. We're a nonprofit association, and we support our members in the industry. I've been in the industry for close to 35 years, and I've been doing this training for about 7.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Wellner. I'm also a trainer with the NTCA, and I am based out of North Carolina.
Yeah. So today we're talking about movement accommodation joints, and just to kind of give you a review, all week we've been talking about exterior installations. We started off with a program called Be a Prepper, and we talked about the prep that's required, making sure that we don't have dips in our substrate, making sure we have slope. All exterior installations require that slope. Then we went on to talk about some of the new pedestal systems that we have out there, and also balcony roof decks, which can be really problematic, and we showed those. But today we're talking about movement accommodation joints. And one thing we always want to think about when we are doing exteriors is making sure that the materials that we're using throughout the entire assembly are approved for exteriors. The tile, the mortar, the grout, everything will work on an exterior. You know, if we have good luck with some material on an interior, we commonly want to move outside with that, but we always need to make sure that it is appropriate. Now, we always teach from the industry standards that we find in ANSI, and as well as the guidelines we find in the Tile Council North America Handbook. And the NTCA has a reference manual. It's a great resource with great guidelines. So all of our training come from these publications. What I'm going to talk about today is movement accommodation joints. So if we turn to 433 in this, we'll find a section called EJ 171. And everything that we're going to talk about today, if you have one of these books, you don't necessarily have to remember all of it because it's all written down here, and you can go back and review that. So one of the things that EJ 171 says is we need to put sealant in our tile assemblies. So something that a lot of people aren't familiar with is tile isn't exactly dimensionally stable. What I mean by that is if we heat up a piece of tile, it can get bigger. Or if it's in the presence of moisture, it can get bigger. And because of that, we need to allow for that movement to happen. If we've grouted everything in and there's no place for that movement to happen, we can end up having failures. In fact, it's one of the leading reasons that we do have failures, and we want to do it right. So one of the things that EJ 171 says is it talks about using sealants, and it defines those sealants as one of 3 things. Polysulfide could be one, urethane, or 100% silicone. So the polysulfides are usually multiple components. There are 2 components that you mix together and are pourable. You have to tape those off, generally speaking, and they're used in commercial and industrial projects. We've got some urethane that we're going to use here. We've got Matt that's actually taping off the area. He's staying a little bit away from the edge of the tile, just a slight way from the edge of the tile. We don't want that tape to get underneath the sealant. Once we put that sealant in, once we pull the tape off, it's going to want to drag it out. So he's being kind of careful about how he's doing that. So a lot of people like to use sanded grout caulking, and for many years that's basically all we had to choose from. You know, there's just an acrylic latex caulking because we want our caulking joints to match our grout, right? But actually that acrylic latex doesn't fall in that criteria of 100% silicone or urethane or polysulfide. So it's not really the right thing to use. We want to use 100% silicone. All of the manufacturers now make 100% silicones to match their grout, so we shouldn't have any reason for that. Tell us what you got going on here.
Well, Rob, I applied blue tape here, but what would be my next step? What am I ready? What should I keep working on here?
Good thought there. So we don't want to have that sealant go all the way into the bottom of the joint. We just want it to adhere to the 2 sides of the tile. If it just adheres to the 2 sides of the tile, it's going to stretch much, much further before it fails. So we did some urethane earlier. Here is just 2 pieces of tile held together with nothing but urethane. we don't want it to bond to the surface at the bottom where it has 3 connections, the 2 sides of the tile and the bottom, otherwise it'll fail quicker. So what we want to do is put a backer rod. We have some closed cell foam material here. We're going to put that in the joint, and that's going to keep us from, break a few pieces off and hand that around. That's going to keep us from bonding to the bottom of the joint and allow that sealant to just adhere to the 2 sides of the tile that we talked about. All right, so just to kind of give you guys an idea of the difference between latex and 100% silicone, I have these 2 pieces of tile here. They're held together with nothing but 100% silicone. Scott, can you help me out? Stand up here. You, sir, Mark, is it? Yes. Can you help me out? Okay, I want you guys to try to pull these 2 tiles apart. Now, I'm going to give you a couple ground rules right out of the gate. First off, nobody gets hurt, number 1. Number 2, I want you to pull directly away. I don't want you to twist like this, because what we're looking for in a lot of these crack isolation membranes, it's just for in-plane movement. If we've got heaving, that's a different story. So I just want you to pull it away and show them how much energy it takes to pull these 2 apart. All right, whenever you guys are ready, we are ready. Just go
Mark's
ahead.
Twisted. Hang on, that's not fair.
Whenever,
come on, Mark.
Go ahead, and they're waiting on you. Just go ahead and do it, okay? Good try. All right, we'll try some of these other guys later. But you can see this is really, really durable. If we were to do that with acrylic latex caulking, it's not going to function that well. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt. He looks like he's ready for some.
So I've got the blue tape, and it's held off the edge just a little bit. I've got my urethane sealant. I'm ready to fill this up now, aren't I, Rob?
You got your backer rod in there?
I do.
All
I've
right.
got backer rod in there.
Got to keep an eye on him.
I'm going to make sure that it's nice and full, so it takes me just a minute. Now, Rob, one thing that I noticed here, why are these joints so big? These are ugly joints.
That's a good question. So we have guidelines for how wide those joints should be, okay? And we not only need, and our talk today is about exteriors, but we also need these for interiors. But exteriors, we need them to be more frequently, and we need them to be wider. So for instance, on an interior, what it says is we can have a movement accommodation joint every 25 feet. And we also need to keep that movement accommodation joint or room around the perimeter of our installation. You know, the hardwood guys and the laminate guys, they figured this out a long time ago. They do not put their laminate against the wall. They don't put their hardwood against the wall. In the same way, we should leave that gap around. It says 1/4 of an inch, no less than 1/8 of an inch. But if we're doing a big project and we go over 25 foot on an interior, we want to put the sealant joint every 25 feet. Now, once we move outside, it's a different environment. Think about the temperature range on an interior. It's probably like 50 to 80 maybe, and it's not getting rained on all the time. Once we move outside, you know, where I live in Springfield, Missouri, it can be 105 and it can be 5 below, so, or maybe even 10 below. So we've got a wider temperature extreme. Plus we've got all that moisture and that water that's going on. Because of that, we're going to have more expansion and contraction. So the 2 contributing factors are the temperature changing of the tile and the moisture that that tile receives. So because we're outside, we need them more frequently. And what EJ 171 says is we need them every 8 to 12 feet. The reason we have that range of 8 to 12 feet is it's dependent on the width of the joint that we install. So if we install a wider joint, we don't need to do them quite as frequently. But if we decide to do a smaller joint, we need to do them more frequently. So for smaller joints, the minimum that we can do is 3/8 of an inch. The wider joints, that's 1/2 of an inch if we're going to do it less frequently.
Rob, I've got this applied. I see all these tools that you brought to me here.
Yeah,
what do I want to use?
Well, you have a wide variety of different things to use.
Did you stir your coffee with this morning?
We could use that if you want to. Yeah, it's got a little coffee on it. But usually on big commercial jobs, lots of times guys will like to use a rubber float.
I'm going to try that.
Let's give it a whirl. Let's see how it shakes out. It's looking pretty good.
So that's giving me a nice full joint, nice and smooth too. That's a good tool.
Yeah, actually that came with the package of that spring, that spray material that we have there. So he's got a variety of different items over here. When it comes to silicone, it's not water soluble, and that's where a lot of guys decide, hey, I don't want to do this, because they're used to using this acrylic latex, and they just take a sponge in the water, and they want to keep using the sanded grout caulk. Well, it just doesn't perform like 100% silicone. Has anyone here ever done a backsplash, where the granite and the countertop meet, and you come back and there's a crack there? Has that ever happened to anyone?
Yeah.
Happens quite a bit, yeah. So that's a change of plane. It's a place where movement can happen. And if we use 100% silicone, we're not going to get those callbacks. It's the right thing to use too as well. So we're doing things according to the industry standard, which decreases our liability. All of the shower methods say use an ASTM C920 sealant. So we want to do things right, and we don't want to have those callbacks.
Rob, talk to me about, do I want to just rip this really hard and fast? Do I want to pull away? How do I want to take this tape off?
Just take it off real gentle and kind of pull it away so you're not getting that tape in that soft
maybe
joint.
Maybe pulling it
there you go.
On a little bit of an angle towards
there you go,
the joint?
There you go, yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
No strings hanging off everywhere. That works pretty good.
Man, we got a great camera shot of that. Just keep going. It's looking terrific over here. Yeah, you're making us look good, man. So anyway, this is the urethane. As a review, we can use polysulfide, usually a 2-part that's pourable. We're gonna have to tape it off. This is urethane, but the tile guys, their choice almost always is gonna be 100% silicone, because we want our joints to match our grout color. And those manufacturers, they've been really good at making 100% silicones to match the grout. So I see you learned about the backer rod there.
Yeah, we covered that already, so now I know that has to be done first.
Yeah,
that's for all of these sealants, isn't it?
That's right. It's just a closed cell foam rod, again, just to adhere to the two sides of the tile, make sure we don't adhere to the bottom, because we want that to function as well as possible.
So you want me to use this caulk next?
It's not caulk, it's called sealant.
Oh.
I thought we talked about that earlier.
I was busy over here, Rob.
All right, that's okay.
Wasn't listening very good.
Don't embarrass me again. Yeah, he's got it.
Well, I'm going to tape this off.
You're going to tape it off. All right, that's one way you can do it, I guess. I tell you.
No, I got this one.
All right, he's got this one. So I'm not going to give him any instruction. We're just going to let him run with it and see how he does.
I worked for a painter one summer when I was in high school.
Okay.
I know how to work a caulk gun. And
all right. One other thing I want to talk to you guys about, because we've been talking about exteriors all week, and anytime I talk to anybody about exteriors, I want you guys to know this. Even if we do everything correct, let's say we do everything according to ANSI and the TCA, these exterior jobs, they're not going to function like an interior job. And in our standards in ANSI, it basically has a maintenance section. And in that maintenance section, it says all installations, but especially exterior installations, require periodic inspection and maintenance. And
Rob, I'm going to show you a trick real quick. What we did back in high school when I was caulking for that summer, we would just take a wet rag.
A wet rag.
And we would
just, oh my, smear it on there.
Go. You keep talking for a minute.
You want to go back to the maintenance thing?
Yeah, go back to that.
So,
I got to figure something out here.
Yeah, so anyway, whenever you've got an exterior, the most important thing is to realize that there's maintenance and manage your customers' expectations. If they expect it to perform like something on an interior, even when done correctly, it probably won't. So what we need to do is, has anyone here ever bought something and someone tried to sell them a maintenance program? Has that ever happened to anybody? That's probably happened to you before. Well, considering that ANSI says especially exterior installations need maintenance, maybe we should, when we're doing exterior projects, especially adhered ones, offer a maintenance program. Tell them we're going to come back, and what we're really fighting with this is the freeze-thaw cycle. Basically, the water that can work its way in. Once that water freezes, it expands and it opens up a crevice. We've got, I'm going to just stand right here when I do this talk here. But basically, let's talk freeze-thaw for a second. If the water goes in, let's say we have a microscopic crack and the water goes in there, it opens it up because that water molecule spreads it out, and then where I live, we have 70 freeze-thaws a year. So this happens 70 times. That crack opens up, opens up, opens up. Also on exteriors, we need 95% mortar coverage. And the reason we want that higher mortar coverage, we only need 80 for an interior, is we don't want that water to get inside and underneath the tile, because when it expands, it freezes, it expands, it can lift the tile up. So how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. It looked awesome.
Look good? All right, we did a great job on that. Let me show you a few
maybe
things.
you should talk to them about some tips and tricks for that caulk we're using.
He's kind of got his own style, but I'm going to tell you some things that'll make this really, really easy, okay? So we want to...
Backer rod.
Yeah, let's put that in there.
Okay, I got that.
You got that part, okay. So you can see this 100% silicone isn't water soluble, but there's some things that we can do to make it really easy. We could either use soapy water, and we always want to check with the manufacturer to make sure that we're using the right stuff. We could use soapy water. Some people and some manufacturers approve glass cleaner, but we always want to make sure that we're under their guidelines when we're doing stuff. But they also make, and this particular manufacturer says what they prefer is to use this silicone cleanup spray that's sold, a professional silicone cleanup spray. Some other manufacturers might allow for like Dawn dishwashing soap, or I don't mean just some kind of dishwashing soap with water, or maybe glass cleaner or something like that. But we also have this. So what we're going to do, when he's filling this up, he's overfilling it. That's an important part, because we don't want to have any edges showing, because after he gets this filled up, we're going to spray that material in there. If it gets down there in the sides of the edges, it's not going to want to stick in that joint. So you can see he's putting a little bit more than he needs on top of there. Once you guys learn how to do this, it's going to be much, much quicker. It'll be as quick as using, acrylic latex caulking.
So you want me to use this?
Yeah, just spray it over the whole joint.
Just a little bit?
No, just you can go pretty heavy with it.
Okay.
And what that's going to do is when he goes to strike it off, it's going to create a barrier between the tile and the sealant, and we're not going to have such a mess.
Do I want to spray this too?
Yeah, I would. And you can also, once you try that rubber grout float, if you're doing a big car lot, you got some big long ones, that might work real good for you.
And what's this spray doing when I spray it on my tools?
It's just basically keeping your tools clean, because this stuff will want to hang on. Well, you saw that at the last one, right?
It was perfect.
Under the blue paper?
No, it was good.
Okay. Well, lots of times it wants to stick to stuff. So you see how he's just dragging that off? It's not sticking to the tile at all. They also make little caulking tools that you can get at hardware stores and box stores. They're like $5, but they make it super, super easy. If you guys are doing a lot of showers and you're using some of that acrylic latex caulking, if it gets in places where there's hot water, it can kind of re-emulsify and kind of turn to goo, or over time it can kind of dry out and have a tendency to caulk. First and foremost, it's not the right stuff. We need to use an ASTM C920 sealant. That's a beautiful job. Again, making us look great. So, all right, so let's go.
We got time for just a quick review and maybe a question. So.
Okay, quick review. Tile is not dimensionally stable. It can get bigger, it can get smaller. When it heats up, when it's exposed to water, those are the times that those sizes change. Because of that, we got to make sure that we have movement accommodation joints. This is about exteriors, so we need them more frequently on exteriors than we do on interiors, because we have a wider temperature range. We want to go to EJ171. It's on page 433 of your TCA handbook. Read it. It takes about 20 minutes to read it. Probably the most important part of the handbook, probably the least used and most often misunderstood part too. So read that. That's your homework assignment. When we go outside, we need them every 8 to 12 feet. The reason we have that range of 8 to 12 is it's dependent on the width of the joint that we install. We always want to use the appropriate material. ASTM C920 sealants that are polysulfide, urethane, 100% silicone. We want to stay away from those acrylic latex caulkings. They're not the right thing. They won't last as long, and we just want to make sure that we have great lasting installation. So, what questions do we have here? Okay, question first. No, it looks great. It
looks great, Jim.
If they want to see it, it's a little bit of a mess. So this is what
I scrubbed the best I could,
let's
guys.
Turn this. Okay, so basically what we're trying to say is this water and a sponge with 100% silicone, you're going to make an absolute mess. But you saw how easily he did that with just spraying that material down. So
looks like most of my hotel room showers.
What is to do a mock-up, to make sure, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I have another thing that came to my head. But anyway, whenever there's a textured surface, we want to do a mock-up, do a practice run. We may have to tape that. It just depends, but most of these we will not have to tape. One thing we don't want to do is do that on a finished application and then find out we have a problem. But if you work with a few things, you might have to tape it off, maybe try different cleaners. Maybe, and that was
this spray right here, I'm going to interrupt you, Rob. That spray and this float that I'm using is a very soft rubber, so even if that tile does have some texture, you shouldn't have any problems. You saw when I built it up high, but I wasn't letting it overflow this direction. So as long as you get lubricant where that texture is, using something
there,
like
it's going to be a bond breaker.
You'll be in good shape.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because with natural stone products, whenever we're using these 100% silicones that I've been talking about, they have plasticizers in them. And occasionally, sometimes, those plasticizers can come in the edge of the tile, and when they do, that can create a haloing effect on the stone tiles. So that's what you want to do, is always do a mock-up and make sure that you don't have that issue. If you do, you're going to have to seal the edge of that tile before you actually put that sealant in. So we don't want any surprises. It's always best to do a mock-up to make sure that we don't have surprises.
Rob, I'm going to interrupt you. They're telling me we're out of time.
All right, we're out of here.
Tell everybody where they can find us the rest of the day.
Look over there, guys. Booth 3938, National Tile Contractors Association. If you're not a member of the NTCA, we've been around 75 years. Come over there. We can get you signed up in 5 minutes. We want you in our association, okay?
We'd love to answer any more questions there.